What is evil? Is it some external dark force, a myth, a shadow, a character from a horror film? Or could it be something much closer, something that grows inside us when we ignore what's right and chase what feels good? Evil doesn't arrive wearing horns and a pitchfork. It creeps in quietly, one small compromise at a time. It begins with justifications, excuses, and convenient lies. Slowly, it transforms a person, first into someone careless, then callous, and eventually corrupt. In religion, we'll often talk about the devil as an external being, but ordinary people can become devil-like when their hearts harden, when their conscience grows silent, when love of self outweighs love of truth. The Quran asks a haunting question: have you seen the one who takes as his God his own desire? That is the root of evil, when our desires become our highest authority. Think of the person who lies repeatedly, even when it hurts others. At first there's guilt, a sting of conscience, but over time that feeling fades. They stop noticing, stop caring, and their soul darkens. This is how evil grows, not through sudden transformation, but through slow decay. A science fiction film from 1956, Forbidden Planet, tells of a civilization that builds a machine to advance spiritually, but instead they unleash monsters from their own subconscious. Their monsters from the id destroy them. It's a powerful metaphor for what happens when we abandon moral boundaries and unleash what lies hidden within. That isn't just fiction, it's the story of humanity itself. When a society stops believing in objective morality, when we excuse sin and normalize corruption, we create real monsters within ourselves and throughout the world around us. God created human beings with the capacity to reach the highest heights or fall to the lowest depths. What determines that direction is moral accountability. Evil grows when we ignore what's wrong, justify it, or refuse to correct it, especially among those closest to us. A corrupt leader doesn't rise to power alone. It happens because people stay silent, because friends look the other way, because society praises charisma instead of character. Evil thrives when good people choose not to speak. So ask yourself, what are you tolerating that you shouldn't? What wrongs are you enabling through silence or misplaced loyalty? These aren't small questions. They are the front line in the battle between good and evil. In the Quran, Satan's greatest victory wasn't rebellion, it was deception. He made evil seem good. He taught people to rationalize the wrong, to drift away from truth one step at a time. That's the path we must guard against. Evil doesn't need to look evil to destroy. It only needs permission. If we don't confront the monsters within, they will become the monsters that destroy us. The fight against evil begins in the mirror. So let us choose light over shadow, truth over comfort, and righteousness over silence. But evil doesn't only live in the hearts of individuals. It hides in the systems we build, the stories we tell, the cultures we defend. When our collective conscience drifts, society itself begins to mirror the monsters within. Let's look beyond the individual and into the world around us, where even culture can become a weapon. Culture can inspire. Culture can elevate. Culture can connect us to something deeper. But what happens when culture is weaponized, when it becomes a tool to shame, silence, or dominate? Culture, like any form of power, can build or destroy. In this episode, we explore how culture becomes a weapon and how we reclaim it as a tool for truth. Culture is not neutral. It carries meaning, emotion, and influence. It can be a bridge or a barrier, a light or a shadow, a healing force or a dividing line. Throughout history, rulers and empires have used culture to shape minds and to silence dissent. Culture is a mirror, but it can also be a mask. Cultural identity gives us roots and belonging. But when it's twisted, it becomes a tool for exclusion. We hear it in words like, "You're not really one of us," or "A true man, woman, or believer must do this." That isn't culture, it's coercion. True culture invites. Weaponized culture imposes. We must be careful when pride turns into policing. Every society has gatekeepers, the ones who decide what's acceptable and who belongs. They might be religious authorities, influencers, political leaders, or even family elders. When culture is used to control thought, silence questions, or punish difference, it stops being culture and becomes dogma. Cancel culture, in many ways, is just modern cultural weaponry. It says, "Agree with us or be erased." One of the oldest weapons of culture is the illusion of superiority. Colonization, forced assimilation, and suppression of indigenous voices all carry the same message. Our way is higher. European empires justified conquest by calling themselves civilized. But any culture that claims supremacy isn't culture, it's propaganda. Culture should never be used to dominate, only to illuminate. Today, culture is used to sell products, win elections, and shape algorithms. It's used to divide societies and reinforce echo chambers. Entire industries profit from cultural outrage and tribal loyalty. And when every message is filtered through identity, we stop thinking and start reacting. We must ask ourselves, is this cultural message helping us think or just keeping us loyal? Culture is meant to serve truth, not replace it. If our culture can't handle questions, it's not strong. If it punishes growth, it's not sacred. True culture says, "Come as you are and grow." We may disagree, but we can still build. It listens, it evolves, it leads with wisdom. We don't have to agree with every tradition to honor culture, but we must never weaponize it. Culture must be a path to freedom, not a prison of fear. So how do we move forward? We build cultures of dialogue, not domination, curiosity, not conformity, healing, not humiliation. We stop using culture to prove who's right and start using it to ask what's true. We stop silencing people and start listening again. Culture is powerful, but power without purpose becomes oppression. Let's reclaim culture as a space for reflection, not retaliation, for learning, not labeling. Because when culture becomes a weapon, it divides. But when culture becomes a tool for truth, it builds. Join me next week as we ask, can culture be bought? The commercialization of meaning. Until then, walk wisely, live freely, build culture with truth. Slavery's story isn't just a record of cruelty, it's a mirror of conscience. Every empire that rose on human suffering believed it was justified. Every nation that profited believed it was necessary. And every generation that stayed silent believed it was someone else's burden to bear. But truth has a way of breaking through, even the darkest chapters of our past. When we face what was done in the name of culture, faith, or civilization, we begin to see that evil isn't born from one people. It's born from the same weakness in all of us. Slavery did not begin in America, nor did it begin with Europe. It began almost as far back as human history itself. Wherever power, greed, and conquest existed, so did the buying and selling of human beings. Ancient kingdoms enslaved prisoners of war, debtors, and even their own people. From Mesopotamia to Egypt, from Greece to Rome, slavery was a part of the world's economy, normalized and justified by culture and religion alike. But centuries before the Atlantic slave trade, another system was already thriving, one that would shape the fate of millions across Africa and the Middle East. It was the Arab slave trade, a network that began long before Islam and continued for over 1,000 years. Before the rise of Islam, Arab tribes traded in slaves captured from neighboring regions, from Africa, Persia, and Central Asia. When Islam spread across the Arabian Peninsula, it did not immediately end slavery. Though the Quran encouraged compassion in the freeing of slaves, the practice itself continued, woven into economies and empires from Baghdad to Zanzibar. Over time, this trade grew vast. Arab merchants crossed the Red Sea and the Sahara, establishing routes that carried ivory, gold, and human lives. They captured or purchased men, women, and children from East Africa, often with the cooperation of African rulers and traders. Together, Arab and African networks supplied markets from Cairo to Constantinople. The numbers are staggering, millions of people taken over centuries. Many were forced to march across the desert in chains, their feet burning on the sand. Countless others perished on the journey, their bones left behind as silent witnesses. Those who survived faced fates that were often worse than death. Boys were castrated to serve in palaces and armies. Women were taken as concubines or servants. Children were separated from their families, their identities erased forever. This was long before European ships began sailing the Atlantic, and when the Ottomans rose to power, the system expanded even further. From the Balkans to North Africa, from the Indian Ocean to the heart of Arabia, the Ottoman Empire relied on human trafficking as a source of labor, wealth, and control. For more than 1,000 years, this trade reshaped the demographic and moral landscape of entire continents. And yet, history often looks away. The Arab slave trade is rarely taught, even though it lasted longer, and in many ways was more brutal than the transatlantic trade that came later. It reminds us that evil is never confined to one race, one region, or one time. It is a darkness that crosses borders, wearing the mask of profit, power, and pride. Both Arabs and Africans played their parts, some as victims, others as profiteers. And just as in every age, there were those who looked away, those who justified, and those who obeyed. It is a story of human cooperation, not in righteousness, but in corruption. We must face these truths without hatred, but without denial, because until we acknowledge the full history of slavery, not just where it ended, but where it began, we will never understand how deeply the human heart can fall, and how far it must rise to truly be free. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Beyond the Veil. I hope it gave you something to think about, something that will bring you closer to the truth. Next week, we will continue exploring where faith, culture, and history meets reality. And I'd love for you to be a part of this journey. Make sure you subscribe, share this video with a friend, and leave a comment to let me know what stood out to you. Together we can bring more light to the world. See you next time.